Some of the strangest countries in history never officially existed. They printed passports, raised flags, even fired warning shots at intruders. From a rusting sea fort called Sealand to a Nevada backyard republic. Some of them were jokes, some were scams, some turned deadly serious. And for years, people genuinely lived and died under these imaginary flags. If you think borders are fixed lines on maps, think again. In this video, we're diving into 39 forgotten mini-countries and microstates. By the end, you'll spot the cracks in how countries form. And you might start wondering which passport you hold feels permanent. Sealand, the sea fort that declared itself a country. A rusting sea fort off England somehow turned into Sealand. During the Cold War, pirate radio operator Roy Bates moved aboard. He took over the abandoned Ruff's Tower platform in the North Sea. Because it lay just outside British territorial waters, laws got fuzzy. In the late 1960s, Bates declared the fort an independent principality. His family printed passports, issued stamps, and even designed a flag. When German visitors arrived by helicopter, Sealand guards reportedly fired warning shots. British courts later ruled the platform was outside their legal jurisdiction. Today, Sealand survives as a tiny family project selling noble titles. When Texas spent a decade as its own republic, an entire U.S. state once spent years pretending it was its own country. After breaking from Mexico in the 1830s, Texans formed the Republic of Texas. Leaders like Sam Houston negotiated loans, printed money, and chased foreign recognition. Its borders on maps stretched wildly, claiming chunks of modern New Mexico. The Republic fought frontier raids, defaulted on debts, and argued about annexation. Britain and France toyed with recognizing Texas, mostly to annoy the United States. Inside Texas, settlers constantly debated staying independent or joining the larger neighbor. Eventually, economic trouble and security fears pushed Texans toward U.S. statehood. When annexation came, Mexico protested, and the stage was set for war. Hawaii, the overthrown island kingdom. America turned into a state. A tropical tourist destination today once had its own overthrown royal court. The Kingdom of Hawaii, ruled from Honolulu, mixed Polynesian roots with foreign advisors. Queen Liliuokalani inherited a throne squeezed by American sugar interests and missionaries. When she tried restoring royal authority, local businessmen organized a coup against her. U.S. Marines landed from nearby warships, giving the plotters a very visible backup. The Queen surrendered to avoid bloodshed, expecting Washington to reverse the takeover. Instead, a provisional government pushed annexation, while Hawaiians organized resistance and petitions. The islands became a U.S. territory, then, eventually, the 50th state. Modern debates about sovereignty still circle statues, palaces, and surviving royal symbols. Venice, the lagoon city that once ruled a maritime empire. A city famous for gondolas once ran a mini-empire across the Mediterranean. Medieval Venice turned swampy islands into a powerhouse of ships and merchants. Its elected doges ruled from the glittering Doge's Palace on St. Mark's. Venetian fleets escorted spice convoys, fought pirates, and battled the Ottoman Empire. Outposts from Crete to Cyprus flew the winged lion of St. Mark. Canals hid grimy shipyards where craftsmen mass-produced galleys like a floating factory. Rival powers slowly strangled Venetian trade as new ocean routes bypassed the Adriatic. When Napoleon marched in, the proud republic basically collapsed without a serious fight. Today, tourists float past palaces that once coordinated a serious mini-superpower. The Conch Republic, when Key West pretended to secede from America. A Florida party island once jokingly declared independence from the United States. In the 1980s, a U.S. border checkpoint strangled traffic heading into Key West. Tourists faced long lines and baggage searches, and local businesses began suffering badly. City leaders, including Mayor Dennis Wardlow, staged a theatrical protest against Washington. They dramatically announced the creation of the Conch Republic with flags and ceremonies. Wardlow even theatrically surrendered after briefly declaring war on the United States. The stunt embarrassed federal officials and drew national media attention to the checkpoint. Soon after, the controversial roadblock vanished, and Key West celebrated its victory. Hutt River, the Australian farm that became a principality. One Australian wheat farmer turned a tax fight into his own principality. In Western Australia, Leonard Castley clashed with authorities over wheat production quotas. He styled himself Prince Leonard, issuing his own stamps, coins, and official letters. Australian officials mostly rolled their eyes, occasionally sending sternly worded notices. Curious tourists drove dusty roads to collect passports and pose with royal signs. Over decades, Hutt River became a quirky roadside attraction wrapped in legal gray areas. Rising debts, tax issues, and Leonard's age eventually pushed the family toward closure. The land quietly reverted to Australia, leaving behind photos, souvenirs, and tall stories. The Republic of Minerva. Libertarians tried building a nation on a reef. A libertarian utopia once tried rising from waves in the South Pacific. U.S. businessman Michael Oliver targeted an almost submerged reef south of Tonga. Supporters dumped sand and concrete onto the coral to create artificial land. They proclaimed the Republic of Minerva, promising low taxes and minimal government interference. A homemade flag was raised, and grand plans for casinos appeared. Nearby, Tonga saw a threat, not a cute experiment in offshore freedom. Tongan troops sailed out, planted their own flag, and claimed the reef. Neighboring countries quietly backed Tonga, unwilling to encourage do-it-yourself nations on reefs. The would-be founders scattered, and Minerva sank back into obscure maritime legends. Liberland, a self-proclaimed country in a no-man's land on the Danube. A patch of scrubby riverside land briefly became internet libertarians' favorite country. Czech activist Vít Jedlička noticed a disputed spot between Croatia and Serbia. Because both sides disclaimed that exact triangle, he called it terra nullius. He traveled there, raised a flag, and proclaimed the Free Republic of Liberland. Online, thousands applied for Liberland citizenship, dreaming of low taxes and crypto-friendly rules. On the ground, border guards kept turning back eager supporters and journalists. Jedlička spent more time lobbying, drafting a constitution, and giving interviews than governing. Croatian police repeatedly arrested would-be settlers trying to reach the muddy banks. Liberland still mostly exists on paper, websites, and hopeful social media communities. Neutral Moresnet, tiny triangle state created for one zinc mine. A weird triangle on European maps once existed mainly to protect a metal. After the Napoleonic Wars, Prussia and the Netherlands disputed a valuable zinc mine. Diplomats compromised by creating Neutral Moresnet, a tiny, jointly controlled microstate. Its borders enclosed a village, the Altenburg mine, and some surrounding countryside. Residents carried unusual documents and watched 3 bigger flags hover around their borders. Over time, locals proposed turning Moresnet into a tax haven and Esperanto experiment. Plans for an Esperanto capital called Amikejo floated around cafe tables and pamphlets. World War I and shifting frontiers eventually erased the tiny neutral triangle entirely. Today, only border stones and plaques remind hikers of its odd legal life. The Republic of Cospaia, Italian village that accidentally stayed independent. An Italian village once slipped through paperwork and stayed independent for centuries. In the 15th century, the Papal States and Florence redrew a borderline. Because officials misread a stream's name, tiny Cospaia ended up unassigned territory. Villagers realized no lord or pope technically ruled over their hilltop homes. They declared themselves a republic with a simple motto about freedom and obedience. Smugglers, traders, and clergy all quietly benefited from this administratively forgotten community. Eventually, surrounding states noticed and pressured Cospaia into giving up its status. The republic dissolved, leaving villagers with stories about centuries of accidental independence. Free city of Danzig, port city that was its own little state. A Baltic port once stood awkwardly between Poland and Germany as a city-state. After World War I, the Treaty of Versailles created the Free City of Danzig. It bundled the city and nearby towns under League of Nations supervision. Poland gained access rights to the harbor, while Danzig kept its own institutions. Large German and Polish communities argued about culture, language, and political loyalty daily. Nazi Germany courted local support, promising unification and protection for ethnic Germans. Tensions over the Polish corridor and Danzig's status fueled angry speeches in Berlin. Germany's attack on Poland finally ended the Free City experiment in fire. Today, the modern city of Gdansk carries layered memories of that status. Free City of Krakow, mini Napoleonic state between empires. Another Polish city once spent decades as a tiny state between empires. After the Napoleonic Wars, Krakow became the Free City of Krakow under treaties. Austria, Prussia, and Russia jointly watched over it like suspicious landlords. Krakow kept its own universities, courts, and symbols, becoming a hotbed of nationalism. Students and intellectuals quietly organized uprisings and plotted against the surrounding powers. When one uprising spilled into the countryside, neighboring empires lost patience quickly. Kingdom of Araucania and Patagonia. A French lawyer crowned himself king. A French lawyer once decided southern South America needed a European king. In the 19th century, Aurélie Antoine de Tournai traveled to Mapuche lands in Chile. He claimed local chiefs proclaimed him king of Araucania and Patagonia. From Paris, he issued grand royal proclamations and designed royal coats of arms. Chile and Argentina completely ignored his royal dreams and continued their campaigns southward. Tunans was arrested, declared insane, and shipped home after one bold visit. Despite that, self-proclaimed successors kept the throne alive as a curious pretender line. Supporters still hold tiny ceremonies, print stamps, and claim to defend Mapuche rights. On maps, though, his kingdom never existed except in pamphlets and imagination. Kingdom of Redonda, rocky Caribbean island turned into a literary kingdom. A mostly uninhabited rock near Antigua somehow gained its own literary monarchy. In the 19th century, Matthew Doughty Shiel claimed the island as a kingdom. He supposedly passed the crown to his son, writer M.P. Shiel. Later, Shiel reportedly granted the title to a London poet and publisher. Writers began trading fanciful redundant titles like Duke and Earl in smoky bars. Arguments about who was the real king of Redonda became part literary game. Multiple rival kings issued overlapping honors, all tied to the same little rock. No government recognized any of them, but the myth kept snowballing among authors. Today, Redonda's main exports are jokes, bookish legends, and imaginary noble titles. the con artist kingdom of Poyais that existed mostly on paper. A Scottish con man once sold investors a kingdom that barely existed. Gregor MacGregor advertised Poyais in Central America as a rich, civilized nation. He printed guidebooks describing an opera house, parliament, and fertile plantations. In reality, the supposed capital was jungle and swamp with almost no settlement. He convinced settlers and bond buyers in Britain to stake their fortunes. Ships of hopeful colonists arrived to find mosquitoes, disease, and ruined expectations. Many died or fled, and the scandal exploded back in London newspapers. MacGregor slipped away, reappearing later in France, still pushing schemes on investors. Poyais became a textbook example of how persuasive nation branding can be weaponized. The Republic of Indian Stream. Border settlers made their own country. New England farmers once created a tiny republic because maps disagreed over head. In the early 19th century, the US-Canada border near New Hampshire was unclear. Settlers around the Indian Stream area faced double taxes and conflicting court summons. Tired of confusion, they drafted laws and formed the Republic of Indian Stream. They created a small legislature, elected officers, and issued their own documents. Officials from both New Hampshire and Quebec occasionally tried enforcing their competing rules. At one point, an arrest over a debt led to an armed standoff. Negotiations eventually clarified the boundary, awarding the territory fully to New Hampshire. The Republic quietly dissolved, leaving behind quirky legal records and local folklore. Rose Island. Engineers built a micronation platform Italy later blew up. Italy once used explosives on a tiny artificial country off its Adriatic coast. Engineer Giorgio Rosa built a steel platform in international waters near Rimini. He opened a bar, invited tourists, and declared the platform the Republic of Rose Island. The new micronation adopted its own official language and even printed stamps. Italian authorities saw it as a tax dodge and potential embarrassment near their beaches. Police occupied the platform. Then the government ordered demolition with explosives. Photographs show waves and twisted metal where hopeful tourists once ordered drinks and postcards. Rosa spent years arguing that he had broken no real law. Rose Island lived on as inspiration for films, books, and sovereignty debates. Molossia, Nevada backyard micronation with its own space program. A quiet Nevada backyard has been treated like foreign soil for decades. Kevin Baugh declared his property the Republic of Molossia, complete with khaki uniform. He named himself president, adopted a national anthem, and set strict border rules. Visitors undergo humorous customs checks, including having certain foreign currencies confiscated as contraband. Molossia claims to be at war with East Germany, long after reunification. It proudly lists a space program involving model rockets and imaginative missions. Baugh tracks national holidays, publishes laws, and mints playful currency called Valora. Despite all the theatrics, U.S. authorities treat Molossia as ordinary private property. Tourists still arrive, passports in hand, to collect stamps and stories. Freetown, Christiania, Copenhagen neighborhood that acts like a tiny country. In the middle of Copenhagen, one neighborhood tried living by its own rules. In the 1970s, squatters took over abandoned military barracks in Christianshavn. They declared a free town called Christiania, rejecting conventional Danish laws and planning. Colorful murals, self-built houses, and communal workshops quickly filled the former base. For years, its open cannabis market on Pusher Street drew police and tourists. The Danish government alternated between crackdowns, negotiations, and uneasy toleration. Residents drafted their own rules about cars, building, and decision-making through meetings. Eventually, a compromise let them collectively buy the land through a foundation. Christiania still feels like a pocket universe wedged inside a modern Scandinavian capital. Užupis, Bohemian neighborhood in Vilnius that issued its own constitution. An artsy district in Vilnius decided every bridge deserved a border crossing. In the 1990s, local artists declared the Užupis neighborhood an independent republic. They drafted a playful constitution, translated into many languages on outdoor plaques. Articles include the right to be happy, unhappy, and even misunderstood. Užupis presidents, ministers, and ambassadors often come from galleries and small studios. They celebrate an Independence Day by stamping visitors' passports at improvised border posts. The Lithuanian state plays along, seeing Užupis as cultural promotion rather than rebellion. Cafes, sculptures, and street art reinforce the feeling of stepping into another country. The Republic thrives mostly on creativity, jokes, and curious visitors with cameras. San Marino, hilltop republic that survived while empires crashed. One of Europe's tiniest republics somehow outlived the empires surrounding it. San Marino sits on Mount Titano, overlooking the Italian countryside below. Legend says a stonemason named Marinus founded a Christian community there centuries ago. Over time, the community developed councils, captains regent, and fiercely guarded independence. Larger neighbors like the Papal States and various Italian dukes eyed the fortress. San Marino survived by careful diplomacy, occasionally offering refuge to political exiles. During Italian unification, Giuseppe Garibaldi reportedly respected its autonomy and spared the Republic. Later, it adapted to modern times by embracing tourism and niche finance. Today, its medieval towers host souvenir shops inside a still sovereign microstate. Liechtenstein, tiny alpine monarchy once mistakenly invaded by Switzerland. A postage stamp monarchy once hosted an invading army that apologized over drinks. Liechtenstein sits between Switzerland and Austria, ruled by a princely family from Vienna. Historically, it survived by staying neutral and leaning on Swiss protection and cooperation. In one famous incident, Swiss soldiers accidentally crossed the border during a training exercise. They marched into Liechtenstein's forests, realized the mistake, and quietly returned home afterward. Local officials reported no damage, and the invasion became a running joke. Beyond that, Liechtenstein turned itself into a financial center and industrial niche player. It uses the Swiss franc, but keeps its own prince and parliament. Modern tourists arrive for mountain views, castle photos, and surprisingly serious museums. Andorra, mountain co-principality shared by a bishop and a president. A tiny Pyrenean country has two heads of state from different nations. Andorra's historic charters made the Bishop of Urgell and French leaders its co-princes. That arrangement grew from medieval power struggles between local counts and church authorities. Modern French presidents unexpectedly inherit a ceremonial role governing this mountain microstate. Andorrans long balanced influences from Spain and France while guarding their own councils. The economy shifted from shepherding to skiing, banking, and duty-free shopping. For decades, Andorra had unusual laws about citizenship, land ownership, and voting rights. Eventually, a modern constitution formalized democracy while keeping the dual prince tradition. Visitors often forget they have technically entered a separate country between the peaks. Nauru, Phosphate Island, microstate that went from riches to ruin. One of the world's smallest republics once briefly became incredibly wealthy. Nauru, a tiny Pacific island, sat on vast deposits of phosphate rock. Colonial powers mined it heavily. Then the independent republic took control post-independence. Royalties poured in, funding generous welfare, imported cars, and foreign shopping trips. The island's interior turned into a scarred moonscape as rock was stripped away. When phosphate reserves dwindled, Nauru's investments and offshore banking experiments collapsed badly. Desperate for revenue, Nauru hosted detention centers for migrants under foreign agreements. Health and environmental problems grew, with little usable land left for agriculture. The country remains a cautionary tale about resource booms and brutal busts. Tuvalu, remote Pacific nation so small it rents out its domain name. A remote atoll nation partly pays bills with an internet address. Tuvalu's scattered islands once relied mainly on copra, aid, and seasonal work. In the 1990s, its country code top-level domain .tv gained new importance. Television companies and streaming startups wanted a catchy web address with 2 letters. Tuvalu licensed the domain, earning significant revenue for such a tiny population. The money helped fund infrastructure, education, and government projects on isolated islands. At the same time, Tuvalu faces rising sea levels threatening low-lying land. Leaders use international forums to push louder climate warnings and relocation fears. The country straddles analog traditions and digital branding in a very literal way. Sikkim, Himalayan kingdom, voted itself out of existence. A mountain kingdom once chose to become part of a larger republic next door. Sikkim, wedged between India, Nepal, and Tibet, was ruled by the Chogyal monarchy. Its capital, Gangtok, mixed Himalayan monasteries with modern hotels and government offices. Tensions grew between royal supporters and parties favoring closer ties with democratic India. Protests, palace intrigue, and pressure from New Delhi steadily undermined the king's position. Eventually, a referendum asked Sikkimese voters about fully joining the Indian Union. The vote favored integration, and India converted Sikkim into one of its states. The monarchy disappeared, but palaces and rituals survived as tourist attractions. Sikkim's story blends self-determination, geopolitics, and Himalayan identity in one complicated package. Kingdom of Sarawak, the jungle realm ruled by the White Rajas. For generations, part of Borneo was ruled by an English family of Rajas. Adventurer James Brooke helped a local sultan suppress rebellion in the 19th century. As a reward, he received Sarawak to govern as his personal kingdom. He and his successors, the White Rajas, fought piracy and expanded territories inland. They mixed British customs with local traditions while ruling from Kuching's riverside. Sarawak issued its own currency, flags, and postal stamps under the Brooke dynasty. World War II and Japanese occupation shattered the gentle image of the kingdom. After the war, the last Raja ceded Sarawak to the British crown. Eventually, Sarawak joined the new country of Malaysia, ending the Brooke era. Duchy of Courland, mini-Baltic state that tried starting Caribbean colonies. A small Baltic duchy once planted its flag in the Caribbean. The Duchy of Courland, centered in today's Latvia, owed allegiance to Poland-Lithuania. Duke Jakob Kettler dreamed of overseas trade and fortunes like bigger European powers. Courland launched ships trading along African and American coasts despite limited resources. Remarkably, it established a colony on Tobago and trading posts in Gambia. Rival colonial powers and European wars repeatedly smashed these fragile Courland ventures. Back home, the duchy was occupied by neighbors, undermining ambitious global projects. Eventually, Courland's independence faded, and the territory was absorbed by larger empires. Its brief colonial adventures survive mostly in maps, archives, and scattered place names. Orange Free State, Boer republic that fought the British Empire. A farmer republic in southern Africa once confronted the world's most powerful empire. The Orange Free State grew from Boers moving inland from the Cape Colony. They wanted autonomy, Calvinist traditions, and control over their fertile interior lands. The republic minted its own currency, held elections, and signed treaties with neighbors. Discovery of nearby mineral riches shifted British attention squarely onto Boer territories. Tensions over sovereignty, railways, and rights for British subjects escalated into war. During the Second Boer War, the Orange Free State's forces fought tough guerrilla campaigns. British scorched earth tactics and concentration camps finally broke the Boer resistance. After defeat, the Republic disappeared into a larger British-dominated South African structure. Transvaal Republic, farmer state that discovered gold and invited invasion. Another Boer republic accidentally dug up the resource that doomed its independence. The South African Republic, often called the Transvaal, sat north of the Vaal River. Boer leaders built a capital at Pretoria, balancing farming interests and limited industry. Huge gold deposits discovered near Johannesburg transformed the region almost overnight. Foreign miners, called Uitlanders, poured in, demanding rights and safer business conditions. Transvaal's government restricted them, causing diplomatic tussles with Britain over treatment and control. Failed plots like the Jameson Raid further poisoned relations between Boers and British. When full-scale war erupted, Transvaal's commandos initially scored surprising victories against imperial forces. In the end, overwhelming British resources forced annexation and ended Transvaal's sovereignty. Free Territory of Trieste, Cold War city that briefly stood apart. A port city on the Adriatic became a geopolitical tug-of-war after World War II. Trieste was claimed by both Italy and the new socialist Yugoslavia under Tito. Allies created the Free Territory of Trieste, divided into zones under international supervision. Italian and Slavic communities eyed each other warily, remembering fascism and partisan warfare. Dockworkers, traders, and refugees navigated checkpoints and shifting rules in the harbor district. Intelligence agencies treated Trieste as a listening post on Eastern Europe's doorstep. Protests and diplomatic talks dragged on as both countries lobbied for full control. Eventually, agreements split the territory, with the city center returning to Italy. The experiment ended, leaving maps, archives, and contested memories of that short-lived autonomy. Free State of Fiume, pirate poet D'Annunzio's short-lived mini-country. An Italian poet once led a paramilitary occupation that birthed a strange mini-state. After World War I, the port of Fiume was disputed between Italy and Yugoslavia. Nationalist writer Gabriele D'Annunzio marched in with volunteers, seizing the city by force. He declared Fiume an independent state, mixing pageantry, speeches, and radical politics. Constitutions, uniforms, and ceremonies turned the city into a bizarre nationalist theater. Neighbors and allied powers refused to recognize his regime, fearing wider destabilization. Italy eventually blockaded Fiume, and government troops moved to push D'Annunzio out. Shelling and negotiations ended the adventure, and Fiume's status was renegotiated diplomatically. The episode left a legacy of political spectacle influencing later European movements. Princely State of Junagadh, tiny realm that tried joining Pakistan by sea. One small princely state on India's west coast chose a surprising direction in 1947. Junagadh's Muslim ruler, the Nawab, opted to accede to newly formed Pakistan. The territory, however, was surrounded by areas leaning toward independent India, not Pakistan. Pakistan accepted the accession, even though there was no direct land connection. Local unrest grew, with many subjects preferring union with predominantly Hindu India instead. India sent troops, arguing it needed to restore order and respect popular wishes. After negotiations and pressure, the Nawab left and Indian authorities organized a referendum. The majority reportedly supported joining India, and Junagadh was integrated into Indian administration. Its story still appears in debates about accessions, referendums, and contested borders. Republic of Gust, French mountain village that claimed centuries of independence. High in the French Pyrenees, one village claimed to be its own republic. Gust sits near the village of La Rune, separated by a steep mountain gorge. Local tradition insists Gust gained autonomy centuries ago over tax and conscription disputes. Villagers elected their own mayor and council, maintaining separate records from nearby towns. Because access was difficult, officials from the valley rarely visited or enforced rules. Stories spread that Gust ignored French laws and even had its own cemetery. Eventually, improved roads and administration folded Gust more tightly into the French state. Today, the Republic label is mostly a charming legend for hikers and tourists. However, residents still proudly repeat tales of stubborn independence above the valley. Kingdom of Tavalara, Sardinian island family that declared themselves royalty. A tiny rocky island off Sardinia once hosted its own self-styled monarchy. In the 19th century, local goat herder Giuseppe Bertoleone settled on Tavalara. Stories say a Sardinian king acknowledged his family's informal rule over the island. The Bertoleone clan embraced the idea, calling themselves the Royal Family of Tavalara. They posed for photographs, printed postcards, and welcomed curious visitors by boat. At one point, they even took a formal portrait in royal attire. No major power ever officially recognized the kingdom, but nobody seriously challenged it. Over generations, tourism and nature conservation overshadowed the family's royal claims. Visitors still hear about Tavalara's kingdom while staring up at dramatic limestone cliffs. Republic of Sauge, French border joke that became a semi-serious microstate. A joke during a ceremony in eastern France accidentally created a pretend republic. In the mid-20th century, a prefect visiting Montbenoit joked about an independent Sauge. Local hotelier Georges Porchet answered in character, becoming the president of the new republic. The idea stuck, and residents began treating Sauge as a playful micronation. They issued novelty passports, wrote an anthem, and appointed regional ambassadors for fun. Events and festivals turned the pretend state into a local tourism brand. French authorities tolerated everything, seeing it as harmless humor and regional pride. Later, Porchet's wife and daughter succeeded him as presidents in ceremonial roles. Sauge shows how a single joke can snowball into decades of community storytelling. North Sudan, dad claimed empty desert to crown his daughter. One American father turned a cartographic loophole into a royal birthday present. Jeremiah Heaton noticed Bir Tawil, an unclaimed desert area between Egypt and Sudan. In 2014, he traveled there, planted a flag, and proclaimed the Kingdom of North Sudan. He said he wanted his daughter to be a real princess, not pretend. Photos of the family in royal outfits quickly spread across news sites. Legal experts pointed out international law requires more than planting a flag. Neither Egypt nor Sudan recognized his claim, and no country backed the project. Online critics questioned the optics of a foreigner claiming African land for symbolism. The story sparked debates about micronations, colonial echoes, and what sovereignty really means. Kingdom of Lovely, internet comedy project that turned into a real micronation. A British television show accidentally created one of the first internet-age micronations. Comedian Danny Wallace launched the project on a series exploring community and belonging. He declared his London flat the Kingdom of Lovely and himself as king. Inviting viewers to join, he gathered thousands of citizens entirely through online signups. Lovely adopted a flag, a national anthem, and playful ministries for daily life. Wallace encouraged citizens to perform small, kind acts in the name of the kingdom. There was no territory beyond the apartment, and scattered citizens worldwide. When the program ended, official royal broadcasts stopped, but online communities lingered. Lovely now survives mainly in nostalgic clips and old forums about invented nations. Global country of world peace, meditation movement then announced a borderless nation. A spiritual movement once declared a country without borders, land, or armies. Followers of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi promoted the global country of world peace. They used the language of nationhood to support projects based on transcendental meditation. Leaders announced a capital in the Netherlands and named regional Rajas as administrators. The group briefly purchased rural properties and even claimed a small Iowa town center. They issued symbolic currency the size of large notes, meant mainly for internal use. Some supporters believed mass meditation could reduce conflict, like a kind of social technology. Governments largely ignored the nationhood claims, treating the movement as a private organization. The global country remains an unusual blend of spirituality, branding, and political vocabulary.